I say Shabbat Shalom to all of you. And first, it sounds kind of churchy when I say this, giving thanks and all honor to the Elohim, to the ministers, to the head ministers of this house, Robert B. Holman Jr. We like to have a good time. Do we not, Hebrews in exile? To the empire of Israel, to the dynasty of Israel, I say Shabbat Shalom to all of you. I say Shabbat Shalom to all of you viewing by way of the stream and those that have joined us here today in this house of teaching. I am elated to be back in front of you one more time. Oh, I forgot. This is going to be a part of my mantra every time I get ready to open. For all of you that want to depict yourselves as Benedict Arnolds, our enemies, who want to come in here and try to dispel the word of truth. You know why I like truth? You know why your head teacher here says truth matters? Part of the reason is because truth and his first cousin facts don't have any ties to emotions. Truth and facts don't care about your emotions, whether you like it or not. You can sit there and spin on it, get mad, or you can be elated. Facts and truth don't care about any of that. We try to do as much as we can to lay down a foundation of truth and facts in here. And I say Shabbat Shalom to all of you that want to come in here and dispel truth and facts. Let us sit down and reason together if you have an issue. But to those I just enumerated, Shabbat Shalom to you and welcome to First Tabernacle Fellowship. I want everybody in here to give the Most High a hand praise. Is that all you have? Okay, I guess that is all you have. The Most High is awesome. I just returned from a voyage out of the country. And the Most High, even though I traveled away from California, Sacramento, California, and went all the way to Cancun, Mexico, with my beautiful wife for a little R&R. And that's relax, rest and relaxation, right? I don't know what you young people call R&R today. You got so many acronyms out there. I don't know what it is. So let's just clarify what R&R means. Okay? The Most High has a way of, even though you travel far, still has a way of touching wherever you are. And my wife and her friends went out on the beach one night. And you're going to need to pull this up because I'm going to Bereshit chapter 22. And that's Genesis. While I was out walking, we were walking towards the beach. We have to go over a bridge overpass. And on this bridge overpass, this is where I stopped because at the end of the overpass, at the end of the bridge, was sand that led you out to the ocean. And I said I wasn't going to go out into the ocean. I said, you go ahead and go with your friends. She went with her friends, and I stayed on that bridge. And the Most High said something to me while I was there. And I recognized, I said, where am I right now? I'm on a beach. And on this beach is what? Sand. It immediately took me to Bereshit chapter 22. And actually, I want to go to start at verse 14 because it's always good to read verse 14. I have verse 14 in my office in my house. 22 and 14. Let's read it together. And it says, Avraham called the place Yahweh Yireh, which is Yahweh will see to it. Yahweh provides. He has provided for this house, has he not? As said to this day, on the mountain Yahweh is seen. The Malach, or the angel of Yahweh, called to Abraham a second time out of heaven, or the Hashamayim, and he said, I have sworn by myself, says Yahweh, that because you have done this, because you haven't withheld your son, your only son, I will most certainly bless. We know what the definition of blessings are, right? I will certainly bless you. And I will most certainly increase your descendants to as many as there are stars in the sky, or grains of sand on the seashore. Where am I going with this? I want to try to establish a precedent right there when it says grains of sand on the seashore. And I looked down and I took some, actually went down to the end of the boardwalk and picked up some of the sand in my hand, and I said, wow, as many as the sands in the sea, on the seashore. And I'm thinking to myself, have that many Hebrews, even in the palm of my hand, all these granules of sand, have that many Hebrews been on the face of the world since the sixth day when we were created? No. No. Either we're going to be in this for the long haul, because most right here in this text, it talks about sand. There was so many granules of sand there. I actually looked up how many, if you had to quantify the sand on the beaches, and I think this says in the world, it said it was 5 sextillion grains of sand. Does anybody know how much a sextillion is? A sextillion is a number that has, let's say it's 1, that has 21 zeros behind it. 21 zeros behind it. This research that I did said that there are about 5 sextillion grains of sand. If what we're reading here says, I will make your descendants as many as the grains on the seashore, either we're going to be in this for a while with this cycle of Hebrew Israel, pulling away from the Most High, getting back to the Most High, pulling away from the Most High, or getting back to the Most High. I'm looking at that text and I'm saying we might be in this for a very, very, very long time. Okay? We following, we tracking. Bobbleheads. I'm looking for bobbleheads and I'm not getting any. Okay, well. While I was there, the Most High had revealed that to me and says, hey, think about this for a second, because we're going to be here for a moment. And then immediately after that, I had a sense of praise in my spirit, because I said, thank the Most High that I was born in a dispensation of time where I don't have to endure the harder butt whooping that I'm getting right now in this land of exile. Because I could have been born in a different dispensation of time 100 years earlier and had to endure the atrocities that our people endured. You are in a dispensation of time where you can enjoy freedom in exile. Our ancestors couldn't. So even if I look at all those granules of sand and I say, are you going to make the descendants of Abraham this many, like the grains in the sand? Then we're going to continue to keep going through these cycles. Thank the Most High I was born in a dispensation of time that was at least in the area of tranquility somewhat. All right. Enough with the monologuing. Let's get into Shoftim, chapter number 3 and 4, which is what we are going to discuss on the Shabbat today. Can anybody remember what Shoftim, the book of Judges 1 and 2, kind of talked about? Anybody? All right. 1 and 2. 1 and 2, I said last time when I spoke, is a good transition between the end of Yahashua and getting into the book of Shoftim. Now, in the book of Shoftim, we have this issue where we're continuing to relapse and relapse and relapse. The children of Israel get hot for the Most High, and then they get immediately cold right thereafter, after the judge or the leader dies. Okay? So that's kind of the outline, and we're going to see that. So kind of look at this like this is where we are in our cycle as Hebrew Israel exiled. So I wanted to make sure that I was looking for that young man that was here. I spoke last time to see if he's going to be here because he's going to need to come up today and remember the name that I had spoke. That there are things that are in text in chapter 1 of Shoftim that you're going to use in chapter number 3. Just like, why is the Most High inserting this issue about Kanaz in here and these particular issues about Moshe? Why is he coming up again in his family? Because chapter 3 and 4 set that up from chapter number 1. All right? So we kind of know, we'll continue to reiterate as we go through the book of Judges of Shoftim. What is this about? It's about the children of Israel getting hot and cold and falling away from the Most High. And every time that they fall away from the Most High's anger gets worse and worse and worse. What do you do with a child? And you tell them, don't do X. And they do it, and you discipline them a little bit. And they go ahead and they do it again. Does the discipline get harder? Yeah, we got to see if we can provoke something out of you so I can trigger something to make you say, the stove is hot. I'm not going to touch the stove because I don't want to get burnt. All right? Let's get into it. Chapter 3, our overview. What are we going to get into? And this, again, I would say if I had to start Shoftim, I would start it at chapter number 3. Because what we're going to talk about is it starts out with Israel's, or the empire, the dynasty of Israel's test, and a generation that did not know Yahweh. All right? And then we have Israel cries for a Messiah, which I'm giving you the answer already. Israel relapses and is captured by Eglon. And then Israel cries for a Messiah. They get Ehud and the fat king. We're going to learn about Ehud and the fat king. All right? And then we have the rescuer, and whose name is Shamgar. There is a move, help me out, in 2K called a Sham God. I knew that was going to resonate with you in the back. Chapter number 4, Ehud dies, and I said this, now listen, I'm not going to use this anymore. That's how I know I didn't proofread. That's probably going to change to an E or a D next time instead of that C. Instead of the children of Israel, the empire of Israel, or the dynasty of Israel. Come on, y'all. They are oppressed by Yavin. Yavin is a Canaanite king from Canaan. And then we have the star of the show, Deborah, the judge, which I'm excited to talk about. She is an interesting character as one of our ancestors. Chapter number 3, let's get right into it. And follow along with me. I'm going to go right through the chapter, point out some different things. Chapter 3 opens up with Yahweh explaining and reiterating that he had allowed these nations. Now, coming out of the end of chapter number 2, Shoftim, what do we have? We've got each one of the tribes being enumerated on who they allowed to live with them. They were supposed to go in and eradicate the people that were there, and they didn't do it. We've got 2 individual tribes. We've got the tribe of Yehuda, and we've got the tribe of Yosef, who actually did what Yahashua had actually commanded them to do, which is drive out all these people, the inhabitants of the land. The rest of the tribes did not. So we're coming in on a tail of that end of that. And then chapter number 3, verse 1, again, this is saying that these are the nations that Yahweh allowed to remain. And he did this. He says this. I said, okay, if people are going to live amongst the children of Israel, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put you to the test. And the people of Israel who had not known any of the wars with the Canaanite. So, in order to put to the test all the people of Israel who had not known any of the wars of the Canaanite. So, these are the people that are beyond Yahshua, Eleazar, beyond Pinchas, right? Because Pinchas is Eleazar's son, okay? Outlived all of them. And now we've got a generation of people that are living with the inhabitants that are still dwelling in the land. And the Most High is allowing this to happen so he can test Hebrew Israel. He names off all of the individual nations that are there. There are 5 chiefs of the Philistine, the Canaanite, the Sidoni, and the Hivi are the ones that were living in the Lebanon and Mount Baal Hermon at the entrance to Hamat. These are those individuals that are still in the land living with Hebrew Israel. Now, again, he reiterates in verse 4, this is to test Hebrew Israel to see if they would do what? Pay attention to the mitzvot of Yahweh, which through Moshe he had ordered their ancestor to obey. Now, what does it say next that Hebrew Israel did? They intermarried with these inhabitants of the land that they were supposed to kick out. Now, is that something in the grand scheme of things, when we're talking about kicking people out, and we've been talking about the command that was been given to the children of Israel, what's happening here? They're marrying with them. Is that something that they were told to do? Prove it. Can you prove it? Thank you. Let's go there. Chapter 7, verse, and what was said out here was Davarim, chapter 7. Chapter 1, not verse, chapter 7, verse 1 through 11. All right? Let's get it together. It says, Yahweh, listen for the part that talks about intermarrying. Okay, so this is I'm trying to establish, like a good lawyer, a case here that not only did you violate in Bad Midbar the command to eradicate everybody in the land, you're getting ready to do something I told you not to do as well, to compound the issue. Let's read it together. It says, Yahweh, your Elohim, is going to bring you into the land you will enter in order to take what? Possession of it. And he will expel many nations ahead of you. I want to draw specific attention to who's doing the fighting. What does it say there? It said, he will expel the nations ahead of you. Remember that. We're going to come back to that concept. The Hittite, the Gigashi, the Emori, the Canaanite, the Perizzi, the Hivi, and the Uvisi. 7 bigger nations, bigger and stronger than you. Remember that point. Remember that. Yahweh's doing the fighting against nations that are bigger and stronger than you. That's going to come up again. When he does this, when Yahweh, your Elohim, hands them over ahead of you, and you will defeat them, you are to what? Destroy them completely. Did they do that? No. Do not make any covenant with them. Show them what? No mercy. Don't intermarry with them. Don't give your daughters to his son, and don't take his daughter for your son, for he will turn your children away from from following me in order to serve other gods. They were told not to intermarry. And when we get over here into Shoftim, if we go back there, we're in verse number, matter of fact, let's go to verse number 5. It says, so the people of Israel lived among the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Emori, the Perizzi, the Hivi, and the Uvisi, taking their daughters as their wives. Okay? We are just continuing to be hard-headed, knuckle-headed, stiff-necked folks that just don't want to listen. We want to do what we want to do. Verse 7. Thus, The people of Israel did what was evil in the perspective of Yahweh. Not in their perspective, what Yahweh's perspective was. Because they'll make excuses and slide in and say, we didn't really mean, this is what this really, no. In Yahweh's perspective, they started doing evil and they started worshiping. And when I talked about it last time, these Baalam, this pagan religion, and Asherim, okay? All associated with the moon and sun gods and all this kind of buffoonery. All right? Now, the anger of Yahweh blazed up against Israel, and he let them be overtaken by the king Arman Nasharaim for how many years? 8 years. 8 years. Now, if this young gentleman was here, I would say, we're going to see our first judge show up right here. This is the first judge. So we've got Yehoshua passes away. Yehuda steps in and conquers for Israel, kind of in this lull period. The children of Israel fall away from the teachings of the Most High. The Most High allows them to be taken over by Canaanite kings or kings from the land of Canaan. And now they're crying out for a Messiah. What's the word in Hebrew? Another word for Messiah is Savior. Okay? We're going to see that come up. So the first one that shows up right here is Israel had cried out. In our podcast, in this recent one, you'll probably hear it in another maybe 2 weeks. We were talking about crying out to the Most High because it says Israel cried out. All right? And Yahweh raised up a savior for the people of Israel, and he rescued them. All right? I'm going to go. I want to stop there for a second. We talked about this issue of crying out. And I had mentioned in the podcast, I said, in crying out, I said, it's not going to be, you got to understand, in order for the Most High, this is me getting on my soapbox, okay? This is me talking. This is me talking. This is me talking. I'm addressing everybody in the room. This is me talking, okay? In order for all kind of deliverance, because Hebrew Israel really likes to have a leader in front of them. They do, okay? A deliverer. When we cry out to the Most High, it's going to have to be a little bit more than crying out. There's a song that the young people, they dance to, walk it like I talk it. Walk it like I talk it. Don't do that. Okay, all right, I won't do that. My wife is turning red. We are going to have to not only come together as a community, because it didn't say individuals. It didn't say somebody's church that's over here having a revival over here in the corner. It said the community of Israel. We have to understand who Israel is first before we decide we want to cry out to the Most High. It just can't be some selected group of people. All right, we got to be on the same page. Now, I believe what you do before I believe what you say. Okay, so it can't be this issue of just crying out and saying, oh, we want you to save us, Most High, from this exile. We're getting oppressed and pop, 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 pop. And you're not doing any of the things that I asked you to do. Okay, so we're going to have to walk it like we talk it. If we want deliverance, okay, then you'll be ready for deliverance once I see it. Okay, now, once we get to that particular point, look at the perspective. I talked about this last time when I was up here speaking. I said, if that comes the case, where is our weapons cache at? Where are our tanks? Where are our drones? Where are our surface-to-air missiles at? Do we have any of this somewhere stacked up? Because if we are going to ask the Most High to deliver us, because we're going to also have to ask the Most High to give us our name back as well. Okay? When somebody says to you, what? You're a Hebrew? Huh? I thought Hebrews were somebody else. Black hats, curly cues, black and white, suits. Okay? When someone says a Yehuda, they don't think about you. Your name has been stripped from you. Do you realize that? Nowhere in the dispensation of time that we read about in text do we ever see Hebrew Israel getting their name taken. This is different, okay? The Most High is going to have to do all the fighting for us because, like I said, we don't have a weapons cache somewhere where we can take on a place like the United States that if they don't get behind, I'm going to get a prophesy on you right now. If they don't get behind Hebrew Israel, the United States will be crushed. You got Hebrew Israel living within your borders. Probably the only protection you have thus far because the remnant is here. All right? And now we have this issue of, okay, if we're going to go take back our land, now we got to deal with this issue of these people, these imposters that are over here, and then we got to get back in here. You don't think that there's something called the United Nations? Do you think a band of black folk are going to band together and then the world not look at that and say, listen, okay, all right, you've had your fun. Go back inside. You got some fried chicken and watermelon in it. You know what? I'm being facetious and having some lividity. But what I'm trying to tell you is that it's not going to be you that does the fighting. When we are ready, when we show that we're following the mitzvot and we cry out as a community, that is when the Most High will send a Messiah. And then at that particular point, you had better believe he's going to be under some serious scrutiny because we would have all been taught the mitzvot of the Most High. You want to call yourself a Messiah, right? Prove it to me. Do you walk what you say? Is anything that I see that you do or say or pontificate out of your mouth talk about what the Most High's commands are? I'm talking about your boy over there on the other side of the street at the 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 11 o'clock service. Okay? Y'all came down here. He couldn't convince anybody who he was. You know? When he started talking, people got up and left. They did this thing on him, what we did in the old church. We want to eat, drink my blood, and oh, wait a minute, hold on, brother. The exit is this way. Okay, I'm going over there. This is this dude. The guy that y'all over here believing that's a part of a triune. What is that? What is that? 3 equal parts serving this one head. Okay, now, if somebody, look at your face is frowned up. You know why you're frowning up? Because what we call that is multiple personality syndrome. Who are you going to be today? Okay, who are we following? Are we following the son or are we going to follow the dad? Because I'm going to tell you what, the son is contradicting the dad left and right. Okay, and then you got the son's emissaries over here saying that what the dad said is weak and ineffective and doesn't accomplish the goal. So which one are we going to be today? We're going to be some spirit today, ooh, like Luther Vandross on a record? Or are we going to be whom? Dad today? Or are we going to be the son? Tell me. Because I'm going to tell you what, you wouldn't get behind. This is the other thing. I'm getting on my soapbox right now. This is the other thing that I've always wondered about this. I said, the Most High doesn't have any space for people that want to play with him. Zero. I'm not diminishing what happened on September 11th. 3,000 plus lives died in that event. I'm not diminishing it. Hebrew Israel by the Most High got ate up. 24,000 people died. Because of what? Idolatry. 24,000. 8 times as more. The Most High doesn't play around. So tell me when he decided, and this is the other thing, my Most High, listen, if the Most High was here, he'd have gold on everywhere, from head to toe. He'd be suited and booted, gated and tailored, coming down here. When this dude gets born, why are we in some stable? That is not how the Most High rolls. And if you had read your text, you would know that. All of a sudden, he becomes a human, this demigod, and he loses all power in his hand. He lets people spit on him, beat him up beyond recognition. That's your Elohim. Let me tell you something, sister. Both of you sisters right here. Just answer right out, shoot from the hip. Pow! Okay? I'm going to ask you a question. Would you be proud if your man got his butt kicked all the time? Is that something you be going around saying, girl, my dude. He get his butt kicked all the time. You know that's the new thing, right? Your butt is getting kicked. Woo! Fresh bruises coming on. I had to, oh, baby. Pat your head with some ice. That is nothing that you would stick your chest out and be proud about, that you got a weak man. But at the 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 11 o'clock service, they got you believing to stick your chest out about something like that. Your God got his butt kicked when he came down here. For you. For you. Baby, I'm just going to give a boom. That's what your God is about. See, the Elohim that we serve doesn't play around, doesn't play games like that. Just for the idea of Hebrew Israel looking at another Elohim means death. That's what's up. You Hebrews haven't been taught, so you don't know how to evaluate the situation. Getting back to my issue, which is when that Messiah shows up, we are going to be on point because we're going to be able to evaluate their worth, their pedigree, to see whether or not. I'm going to tell you another thing. When we start getting into this right now, which I need to start moving, I may have to break this up into two pieces. Back to Shoftim, because there's something I want you to see right here. Matter of fact, I stopped. Let's go back to verse 9. It says, but when the people of Israel cried out to Yahweh, Yahweh raised up a savior for the people of Israel and rescued them. This was Ontiel. I talked about Ontiel last time when I was here. Ontiel is I believe the nephew of Caleb. And that was talked about in chapter number 1. That's why that was inserted in there. Why? Because you're going to see a lot of these judges are military-minded people. He was put to the test to see whether or not he could take this hill, because Caleb came and said, hey, listen, y'all, if whoever can go up there can take that hill, I'll give them my daughter. This guy was the one that went up to the hill and took it. And then she came back and she convinced him to give him some extra pieces of land. You saw this judge show up to challenge his pedigree so you understand that he's a military-minded person. You're going to see this come up again. Some so-called savior wants to come down here and tell you something. I'm going to deliver you and turn the other cheek. Your saviors are military-minded people. Yehoshua is a military-minded person. His teacher, Moshe, led him through 2 battles. Every single point that we have, Israel knows how to fight. This no turn the other cheek garbage that y'all been getting taught, okay? Now, verse 10. The Spirit of Yahweh came on Ontiel, and he judged Israel. Then he what? He went out to war. He crushed the king of Amram, and the land had rest for 40 years until Ontiel died. Guess what happens next? After he dies, what did Hebrew Israel do? Well, let's go right on back to worshiping worshiping other deities. Let's find us another one. Let's go worship the Smurfs. Let's go find something. Verse 12. Hebrew Israel relapses and they get taken into captivity. This takes you through 14, and they go back into captivity for 18 more years. They went in for 8, got out of the penitentiary, got back out in them streets, and then they got sent right back in to the penitentiary for another 18 years. Wow, Hebrew Israel, come on, let's get it together. Hebrew Israel then what? Cries out for a Messiah. Yahweh raised him up. Who raised him up? Yahweh raised him up. Did a man raise him up? No. Yahweh raised him up. Praise the mighty Yah. For a savior. So we've had saviors before, right? So when Jesus Christ shows up, he ain't the first savior. Okay? Supposedly so-called. We've had them before. This is nothing new. Okay? Came from the tribe of Benjamin. All right? Now, this is interesting because this is Ehud and the fat man. I'm not trying. I know that we got body acceptance going on, so I'm not trying to get any trouble. But the text says that this king was fat. He comes from the tribe of Benjamin, and he was a left-handed man. Okay? Now, the king of Eglion, upon which the children of Israel are now in that captivity, what this individual does, being called by the Most High to deliver Hebrew Israel, Ehud, makes a double-edged sword 18 inches long. Okay? Now, he was elected by, so this dude had a machete. Okay? He was elected by the children of Israel to give their tribute to the king. So he goes and gives the tribute to the king. After he gives the tribute to the king, they all leave the king's chamber. He gets so far to a quarry, I believe, and he turns around and comes back, and he says to the king, he says to the emissaries of the king, I have a message, a private message for the king that I need to deliver to him. I'm pretty sure the king was pretty elated because probably prior to, and I'm speculating, that whatever tribute Hebrew Israel gave them, he was very satisfied. So let me hear what this young man has to say. He goes back into the cool of the room in the upstairs area, and they have a conversation. Now, what happens is that what happens is he goes and he has this conversation with the king, and what he does is he reaches out to shake his hand. But he's what? He's left-handed. Come here. Please. Yeah, you are esteemed, honorable head teacher here is joining me on the forefront. Oh boy. I'm not doing this because you're a boxing champion. Okay. All right. Okay, now. My knee hurts. So I'm going to reach out. You're a right-handed man. Yes. Right. So I'm going to go to shake your hand. It's like this. Now, what it says, the text says, is that he had this 18-inch double-edged sword strapped to his leg, his right leg. So in boxing, you always have to guard yourself, all right? So if I'm doing this, I'm coming in here like this, all right? So I'm taking the sword out, whoosh, coming in, pulling in, right in his gut, right in his belly, okay? Thank you, sir. Right in his belly. So he's vulnerable, okay? Now, it says that when that blade went in, he put it in all the way to the hilt. Does everybody know what a hilt is? Okay, so imagine a sword, and then you have the little cross member at the bottom, and then your hand is right there, okay? The little cross member is called the hilt, okay? So he drove that 18-inch knife in there all the way to the hilt. So that actually what happened is his fat roll came down over top of it and pushed it in to his body. Now, in the Hebrew, as I was doing some research on this, it said that it came out the back. And in Hebrew, I've read a commentary that says that what that meant was that, because there's a word in there, and I don't recall what it is, but it means dirt. Like it came out the back with dirt. So if that is the case, then that sword went into his intestines, worked its way all the way down till it came out his behind, coming out the back, okay? That's the morbid side of it. The other side of it simply is it went in so far, it still worked its way all the way through his body so that the sword came out of the back of him. Okay? So he was good and cut up. All right? Now, once Ehud did this, he goes and locks the doors and then leaves. What happens is that the emissaries of this king, Eglon, they don't see the king for a while. And they're just like, oh, this guy must be in there relieving himself because he's in there for a very, very long time. Now, after a while, they get embarrassed about how long the king has been there. So they actually open up the door and find this king dead, lying on the floor. Ehud, after escaping, goes back to the hills of Ephraim. He rallies the troops, about 10,000 men from the tribes of Israel, and they set out and they slaughter everybody from Eglon. And thus, Moab was subdued, and this is verse 30, on that day under the power of Israel. Then the land had rest for 80 years. So they experienced no persecution for 80 years. Now, we end this particular chapter with verse number 31, which is this issue of Shamgar. Now, during the time of Ehud, Shamgar existed. And I'm not quite sure why Shamgar is noted here, other than the fact to say that Shamgar actually used what is called an ox goad. Does anybody know what an ox goad is? All right. That is an ox goad. All right. It is used to prod the ox or the animal to move forward. And the hook is to hook on their horns to pull them where you need them to go. That's what an ox goad is. All right. Says he killed how many? 600 Philistines or Philistine with an ox goad, which is a farming tool. Now, Hebrew Israel knows how to what? Fight. Okay? We are not that passive group of folks. All right? So we'll end that there on chapter number 3. Chapter number 4. Ehud dies in chapter number 4. And the people of Israel again did what was evil from Yahweh's perspective. Yet again, we fall back into this issue. Now, there was a king. Here we go. There was a king. His name was Yavin. Yavin had a commander of his army named Sisera. Okay? Now, Sisera, the commander of his army, had at his disposal 900 chariots. And the people of Israel, the empire of Israel, called out to Yahweh because they had cruelly been oppressed for at least 20 years. Now, when the children of Israel cried out for a judge and a prophet, the Most High sent whom? Devorah. Okay. All right. Now, I want to give you a little personal testimony. I grew up in a Baptist church back in Podunk, Akron, Ohio. In Podunk, Akron, Ohio, Podunk is not part of Akron. Okay, y'all, don't look that up. Where's Podunk, Akron? No. So, in Akron, Ohio, I understood that women were not supposed to be in a position of authority at nobody's church. Was that the same out here in California? That women are not supposed to be in a place of authority. So I want to let you understand something. Your perception of what our gender roles are to be are totally different in Hebrew Israel. Okay? We got to understand that. All right? Devorah is if I was going to say the modern woman, Devorah is the modern woman. Devorah is a judge and a prophet. She has to not only hear all of the issues that are going on in Hebrew Israel, she has to administer the atonements for them, direct and guide the tribes and clans headsmen. She has to do all this officiating. And it says that she is what? Also a what? A wife. Okay? So she's at a position where not only does she have to perform outside of the home, but then she has to perform inside of the home. Now, let me be very clear when I say perform inside of the home. All right? Devorah is an individual that is the head of what goes on in that house. Okay? Now, obviously, the responsibility of the total headship, it falls upon the man. But the things that are happening on a day-to-day basis, Devorah knows about. I didn't say anything about Devorah doing them. Devorah has help. She has people that help her. She oversees all of what's going on to make sure things are running correctly. She is the general manager of that house. She's not CEO. She's the general manager of the house, and she's responsible for the things that are there. She has a duty, and she serves in that office. This is, again, I know this day and age we're talking, how do I balance being, a corporate woman and being someone who can do the wife, not play the wife, but also act in that office of wife, okay? We have a great example here of Devorah. Had that been taught a couple of decades ago, I think we'd be in a better spot, okay? We've got this issue of suppressing females because of something that was going on in the Ozzie and Harriet years. The woman is confined to the house. She's going to be barefoot and pregnant. She's going to take care of everything. Wash my feet, wash my car, clip my toenails, sand down my bunions. That is not something that she's ordained to do, okay? That came out of a dispensation of time that has nothing to do with how Hebrew Israel functions. I just want to bring that up and drive that home. That is, anytime you come across something that says a woman cannot lead, that is an outright lie. Because we have a clear example here. Devorah, prophet, wife, and judge, calls an individual by the name of Barak. Not Barack Obama, because we're missing the C and the Obama at the back, but an individual named Barak from the tribe of Naphtali. And this is what she says. Let's go to chapter 4, verse 4 through 11. And it says, Yahweh has given you this order. Go and march to Mount Tabor and take with you 10,000 men from the people of Naphtali and Zebulun. I will cause Sisera, the commander of Yahweh's, Yavin's, not Yahweh, but Yavin's army, to encounter you at Kishon River with his chariots and his troops, and I will hand them over to you. Barak answered her, if you go with me, which he's talking about Devorah, I'll go. But if you won't go with me, I won't go. She replied, she said, yes, I will gladly go with you, but the way you are doing it will bring you no glory, because Yahweh will hand Sisera over to a woman. And that's not what the ordained issue is. What was ordained here was for who? Barak to do it. When Devorah set out and went out with Barak to Kadesh, verse 10, Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali to come to Kadesh. 10,000 men followed him, and Devorah went with him. Now, back in chapter number 1 of Shoftim, we talk about this group called the Cain. And that is when I went to my little dissertation about Moshe and his family. Because here it says the descendants of Hovav, Moshe's father-in-law, he had pitched his tent near an oak, close to Kadesh. These individuals, like I said, the point in bringing that up was to draw your attention to who these Kayin people are. They're actually Ethiopians. They come from that Rift Valley area, from the land of Cush, right in there on the top northeastern coast of Africa. That's who these people are. Now, Hever, that says now, Hever, the Keni, had cut himself off from the rest of the Kayin. So there's these group of individuals, these Ethiopians that are traveling with the Hebrew people. These groups these Ethiopians are called the Kayin. There's a guy in there called Hever. He separates himself from the Kayin. Now, Hever has an interesting position. Do any of you have this? Do any of you have this? Do you have a friend or two friends that, well, let's explain it to you like this. Let's do it like this. I know you and I know you, but you hate each other. Are you in a situation like that? Or do you know of a situation like that? Where you have two friends that don't like each other, but they're cool with you. Okay? That's Hever. He's cool with Hebrew Israel, but at the same time, he has an alliance with this group. Okay? He has an alliance. Right. So that's, you got to understand where he is in the middle of this, because this is going to set up what happens next. Okay, now, it was told to Sisera. That's where I am. Excuse me. And he was informed. This is of Yavin's army. The commander of Yavin's army was informed that Hebrew Israel was going to be at Mount Tabor. He rallied all of his troops and all of his iron chariots, tanks, missiles, everything. Let's load up, boys. Let's go get these Hebrews. And Devorah said, get going, because this is the day that Yahweh will hand Sisera over to you. Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following. That is from the tribes of who? Zebulun and Naphtali. He encountered Sisera, and Yahweh confused their army, and they were able to overcome the army of Sisera. The only person that was able to escape was Sisera. Now, Sisera's on the run. He goes to, remember I gave you that example of you got a friend and you got a friend, or I got a friend and we both, oh boy, I'm messing this all the way up. I need to start this all over again. You got two people that know each other that don't like each other. Okay, let's get, right, but they like me. Okay, so what happens here is he runs to that person that's in the middle, okay? So Sisera runs to Hever, to the house of Hever. Now, there's a woman in this next passage that you probably don't know about, and she is cold-blooded to the core. Her name is Yael. Yael is married to Hever, and he meets, matter of fact, Sisera, Yael, at her tent. I'm on the run. I got these Hebrews coming after me. I need to take refuge. She invites him in. Oh, come on in. No problem. She invites him in. He actually tells her, he says, listen, if anybody comes here asking for me, tell them, no, I am not here. While he's in there, she says, okay, I'll do all this. She covers him with a blanket. She covers him with a blanket. All right? So he's completely covered, trying to hide on the lam. All right? Evading the law. He asks her for something to drink, some water. Because he's thirsty. And she gives him milk. And I thought that was odd. And I said, is there anything to this? And there actually is. Okay? Now, I don't know if I would switch based on this information, but I'm going to let you decide. Okay? Milk. Why did she give him milk instead of water? Let's ask the question. Let's try to answer it. Milk is better than any sports drink or water because it has a high source of high quality protein, carbohydrates, calcium, and electrolytes done by a study by Dr. Brian Timmons, an assistant professor of medicine at Macalester University in Canada, that had said in a written statement. Said for the study, Macalister's researchers had 14 8 to 10-year-olds, 14 8 to 10-year-olds exercise on a stationary bike for 40 minutes. Then he gave them either skim milk, water, or a sports drink to measure their hydration. After a 2-hour recovery period, 75% of the skim milk drinkers had retained their hydration, compared to 60% that retained their hydration from the sports drink, and 50% hydration was retained for those who had water. Water drinkers also produced twice as much urine than the milk drinkers. Now, I'm pretty fit and I do a lot of running, and I don't know the first thing I'm reaching for is a glass of milk coming off of a run. But if that be the case, then our ancestor knew, Yael, that this would quench his thirst, because he asked her, give me something I need to quench my thirst. He says, instead of giving you water, let me give you milk, because it's going to what? Relax you. It's going to relax you. She puts the blanket back over him. He's so relaxed. Falls asleep. This woman is so cold-blooded. What she does next is, while this man is sleeping on the floor, she takes a tent peg and she takes a hammer, and she takes the hammer and gets down on her knees, takes the tent peg and the hammer and puts it to the temple of Sisera and drives this tent peg through his temple into the ground. The women of Yahweh are not to be played with either. Well, we might go ham on you as a man. This woman had stealth. She manipulated the situation. She acted in a way that was strategic. How many of those accolades can we press upon our young people today? We are not teaching these things and showing how our ancestors acted. Be coy, be cunning. Use some type of poise and discretion. Lure them in like a Venus flytrap and then execute them. You have no kind of execution at all on how you function and move, because you've been watching too much of that idiot box show you what a man and a woman should be. You're not getting Hebraic teaching on how a community functions. These women are not to be played with. Now, I'm going to tell you what, if they fear the men, they better fear the female too. They can't be up here talking about we fear the Hebrew men and then the women get left out of that too. She had no compunctions or reservations about taking this fool smooth out, and did it. All right. Whew. Hebrew Israel caught up, and she explains what happens. She says, this man fell deep asleep. I drove a tent peg right through this man's head. Verse number 22. So here Barak pursuing Sisera, and Yael steps out to meet him and says, come, I will show you the man that you are looking for. He goes into the tent, and there's Sisera lying dead with a tent peg through his temple. The Elohim thus that day defeated Yavin and the Kenani in the presence of the people of Israel. And the hand of the people of Israel came down more and more heavily against Yavin, the king of the Kenani, until he had completely destroyed the king of Kenani. Folks, again, I try my best to admonish you to understand that Hebrew Israel is a dynasty of people that are opulent and have a great deal of ostentatiousness to them. And we need to reestablish that. The book of Shoftim is going to be the same reoccurring theme every single time. That's the backdrop. We fall away from the teachings of the Most High and we get in trouble. We cry out and we get a savior or we get a judge. Somebody will always be there to light the way. We as Hebrew Israel need to understand that we have a jealous Elohim. And that Elohim is not going to continue to take our treachery that we continue to exude on a day-to-day basis. We need to return back to the mitzvot of the Most High. We need to teach the mitzvot of the Most High. Like I said earlier, the Most High has given us the mitzvot, which is truth, which are facts. And truth and facts don't care about your emotions or your feelings. We have to have teachers and places of regard where we can teach individuals how to observe these mitzvot so we can get back into right standing with the Most High. Again, reoccurring theme, getting hot for the Most High, falling away. Getting hot for the Most High, falling away. We are currently in exile in one of these cycles. And we have a roadmap here on how to break that cycle and issue into a new dispensation of time. If we would just pay attention and not try to make everything about us, okay? Stop making it about you. It is about a community of people getting back into right standing and right lifestyle with the Most High. That's what it is about. It is not about your relationship. It's not about your job. It's not about your kids. Okay? All of those things work themselves out because we have a lifestyle that tells us when we walk that lifestyle, things become very easy. But we don't know that because we don't do it. We'll try to do everything else other than follow the Most High's teachings. I thank all of you for journeying with me through these 2 chapters, sticking with me to the end. I want to draw your attention again to our social media. Go to our YouTube page. We have a podcast that's taking off, that's doing really, really well. It's on Podbean. Make sure you go there. We have our literature in defense of the Messiah that's on Amazon. Tell your friends about what we're doing here, what we're trying to do. Get them involved. We got good things that are coming up on the future as for our outreach worldwide, and we want you to be there with us. I thank the Most High for allowing me to be here with you today. To that, I want to bless all of you in the Arianic benediction that can be found in Bamidbar, chapter number 6, verses 24 through 26. And it says, Yivareka Yahweh v'yishmareka, Ya'er Yahweh panav eleka v'huneka, Yisa Yahweh panav eleka, v'yasam leka shalom, which means in English, may Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine on you and show you his favor. May Yahweh lift up his face towards you and give you shalom. And to that, I say shalom and peace be with you.